Welcome to Sci-Fi Quantum Archives. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore. Wind pressed low across the deck, flattening snow into thin seams along rusted railings. Metal groaned where ice had fused with steel. Inside the narrow sonar room, yellowing light buzzed over a console worn to the grain. Screens pulsed with long, blue sweep. 4 hours, nothing but the dull rhythm of return signals, each one a fingerprint of silence. A small shift. One notch on the screen curved wrong. Not jagged like rock. Not smeared like melt. Just wrong. A sound without an edge. The technician leaned forward, breath fogging glass, eyes tracking the shape reappearing every cycle. Low frequency. Deep. But clean. Too clean. His hand hovered, not touching anything yet. Just watching the pulse repeat. 36 seconds apart. A consistent harmonic that didn't taper or decay. It wasn't interference. It wasn't feedback. It was something real, bouncing back in a curve instead of noise. Shape suggested volume. Volume suggested space. The others hadn't noticed. Conversations continued 2 doors down, boots scraping against metal flooring. He muted the ambient channel. Reset the parameters. The signal stayed. Same tone. Same delay. Same unnatural symmetry. Outside, ice stretched in every direction, unbroken. No calving shelves. No recent quakes. No thermal collapse. Just flat cold, reflecting light without warmth. Radar pings mapped a familiar topography, until they didn't. One quadrant returned nothing. Not blank. Not failed. Just pure tone. He ran it again, isolating the depth window. The signal curved upward, then down like a breathing shape inside a static body. It wasn't responding. It was maintaining something. Holding pitch through miles of pressure. He moved to the manual stack, pulling old charts, old layers, cross-sections from previous scans. That section had always registered solid. 4 years. Unchanging. White mass, dense. No anomalies. No flow melt. But today it sang. He layered the previous year's data over today's map. The difference wasn't structural. It was tonal. The glacier hadn't moved. It had opened. Or it had become something that registered like openness. Not hollow in the ordinary sense. Something finer. Something tuned. No alarms. No announcement. Just a quiet scan, rerun over and over, until the noise no longer read as noise. Until every return wave hummed at a frequency the human ear couldn't grasp but the body might feel. Like pressure in a plane. Like air before a storm. He logged the sequence, labeled it soft, then deleted the timestamp. Not out of fear. Something closer to caution. Like speaking during a pause in music, not knowing whether it had ended. Outside, snow carried no direction. Inside, every second pressed heavier. The glacier was humming. The file landed in her inbox without subject or sender. Just a timecode, 3 digits clipped and raw. She played it once, without sound. The waveform displayed as a single, continuous swell, neither jagged nor flat. She dragged the cursor back. Played it again. This time with audio. The tone didn't shift, didn't modulate, didn't pulse. It just held like something beneath breathing. No explanation followed. No note from the technician. But the silence after the tone was longer than it should have been. That was the message. She gathered the team in the lower galley, where the cold from the deck crept up through the bolted steel, chilling the backs of knees and fingertip. No one spoke while the projection loaded. Lines of blue carved across translucent digital ice. One scan at a time. Each sweep revealed another void. Too many to dismiss as melt pockets. Too symmetrical to belong to chance. Some of the shapes connected. Not tunnels but chambers. Globes aligned in descending clusters, each nested with precision that suggested nothing known to form naturally, yet nothing about it felt designed either. The dimensions matched nothing found in glacial collapse or thermal shear. Everything about it contradicted history while avoiding the absurd. She didn't ask for theories. She pointed to the eastern ridge, 6 kilometers from the nearest station. Pressure readings low enough to allow access, but only just. The ice above measured thin, by Arctic standards. A 1-meter error could bury them, or worse, snap the shaft mid-descent. The margin didn't matter. They were going down. The youngest among them pulled open the side panel and mapped an entry sequence. Wind conditions forced a nighttime approach. That meant no aerial, no margin for wideout, pack light, cut non-essentials, no redundant gear. No one argued. Outside, the vessel creaked under slow expansion. Metal groaned against permafrost. The last daylight ran blood orange across a frozen plateau that had no name before this week. No designation beyond a grid reference. Until a tone reached back through 40 meters of ice and held itself in place without shape or source. From the forward hold, insulated crates clicked shut. GPR kits, core drills, old lithium lamps with cracked glass lenses. No drones. No sonar. Only what the body could carry and what fingers could read through cold. They moved with calm unfamiliar to ordinary urgency. Something in the silence of the scan had passed through each of them, as if the tone hadn't entered through the ears, but another part entirely. One that measured wrongness by its refusal to feel alarming. The glacier did not speak. It didn't shift, didn't signal. It just opened in a way that ice never does, without fracture, without warning, without force. Their work had rules. Structure determined approach. Probability governed safety. But this shape did not belong to failure or thaw. It suggested architecture without intention. Every scan returned another curve. Every curve sang. Inside the main lab, lights dimmed. Outside, the snow moved sideways in silence. Preparations continued until motion no longer served purpose. By midnight, departure was sealed. Only one phrase passed between them, quiet, without ceremony. No one's ever recorded a glacier that sounds like it's choosing its own pitch. Steel teeth bit into compressed snowpack, carving downward in a narrow spiral no wider than a chimney throat. Ice chipped away clean at first, crystalline and dry, then thickened into blue-veined slabs that hissed under pressure. No one spoke during the cut. Breaths moved in clouds too dense to see through. Gloves flexed against drill mounts, not from cold, but from something quieter that settled behind the ribs. Meters fell away in intervals of 9. Each level brought tighter air, heavier cold, less surface sound. Instruments remained fixed to the cable coil, no vibration registered. Only a low trace on the scanner, static interrupted by a single, flat dip. It held shape like a sustained note stretched beyond human hearing. 16 meters down, the drill stopped. Not by obstruction. Not by fault. The bit passed into absence. Resistance vanished. Torque dropped to 0. That wasn't supposed to happen. They lowered the lights on a spool. The beam dropped into space that should have been solid. It didn't flick against walls. No drift, no snow dust, no particles in suspension. Just clean black, followed by curve, ice catching light in a slow arc. The cavity opened smooth and wide, not jagged, not shaped by collapse. A dome, but not quite round. Lines bent the light, subtle distortions that made distance impossible to read. A rope descended first. Then boots touched down, one by one, onto a floor that gave no sound. Not slush. Not packed powder. Not rock. Something in between. Cold passed upward through soles, not biting but constant, like standing on old metal. Sound began 2 minutes in. No source. No direction. Just a hum that entered without warning. Low, uniform, unbroken. No shift in volume, no texture. A sound you don't notice until your chest picks it up. Something that settles behind the breastbone. The body hears it before the mind. The instruments pulled it apart. 17.2 Hertz. Right on the cusp of perception. Below voice, below breath. A standing tone, pure and fixed, within the Earth's own low-frequency resonance. No oscillation. No environmental decay. As if the chamber was not just transmitting the sound, but holding it. They moved slow through the chamber, careful not to speak above a whisper. Not superstition. not reverence. Something about the acoustics punished intrusion. Words felt heavier, less obedient. Voices bent midair. Some syllables landed sharp, others fell sideways. The scanner signaled depth variance. Another hollow lay beneath. Smaller. Elongated. Orientation suggested a drop rather than a dome. No connecting tunnel registered. No slippage. Just negative space where no space should be. Another shaft was cut, shorter this time. Ice came away in smooth spirals, cleaner than above. No fractures. No embedded sediment. Pure mass giving way like material designed to be removed. At 29 meters, the second chamber opened. Not gradual. Immediate. Floor dropped away into a cavity narrower and taller than the first. This one pulsed a different tone, 21.8 Hz. Just high enough to feel different in the throat. Both chambers sang, but not in conflict. Their tones didn't clash. They layered. Aligned in a ratio near perfect thirds. Not musical. Not melodic. Just structured in a way that the body instinctively recognized as complete. Light barely moved down there. Walls refracted the beam, folding it back in muted halos. No color registered. Only gradients of silver and blue. Touching the surface made fingertips buzz. The hum didn't grow louder. It grew closer. No animal sound matched it. No machine hum replicated it. The frequency was not unfamiliar because it had never been heard, it was unfamiliar because it had always been there, waiting under all other noise. From the scanner feed, the two cavities displayed like lungs frozen mid-inhale. They weren't empty. They were tuned. Radar didn't penetrate easily through layered ice. Signal tended to scatter, refract, lose cohesion within frozen striations built over centuries. But the scans from this shelf came back with impossible clarity. No noise. No interference. No depth distortion. Just clean return pulses outlining structures too symmetrical to dismiss, too orderly to explain. First chamber. Then second. Then a third one caught along a southwest trajectory, smaller, denser, with a frequency shifted 2 Hz higher than the last. Each void returned not just shape but tone, distinct frequencies, none repeating, all mathematically balanced within audible range when processed. No resonance spikes. No fluctuations. Each held its tone like a tuning fork submerged in silence. Mapping software failed to project depth layers properly. Too many returns. Too close together. Geometries layered without collapse. Each chamber existed in relation to another, aligned along curved planes rather than vertical shaft. A pattern emerged. Not spatially architectural, but acoustically rational. The way sound moves through open bodies. The way wind organizes inside old flute. This glacier was not a shell. It was a body with lungs built in sequence. They dropped contact mics at every entrance. No reverb. No distortion. Just tone, as if each cavity had been carved not by motion or melt but by the adjustment of pressure across seasons. Ice responds to force. But this formation had responded to something else. Pressure timed so precisely that chambers grew to fit frequency. Temperature sensors dipped below threshold levels known to fracture normal mass. No cracking. No shear. Only walls so dense they returned infrared in perfect gradient. Touching the interior surface brought vibration, not heat. Not cold. A silent pulse that didn't shake but passed cleanly through bone. One chamber was wider than the rest. 40 meters at the belt, narrowing toward each pole. It produced the lowest tone yet. 11.1 Hz. That sound didn't hum. It moved in waves too slow for hearing. It shifted pressure across the eyes, made breath harder to time. 2 of the team reported nausea without vertigo. One simply sat, not from exhaustion but from something harder to name. Not pain. Not illness. Something else. As if the shape itself refused interpretation. In the base camp log, field notes described the formation as harmonic scaffolding. Not theory. Observation. Natural structures do not repeat ratios at perfect thirds unless guided by pressure regularity or something yet undefined. These caverns weren't just voids, they were pressure-tuned, not as in tuned by choice, as informed in response to invisible forces repeating over millennia. Seismometers rigged to each floor plate captured tremors from as far as the Pacific Ridge. 20 seconds later, chambers shifted pitch. Not wild, not chaotic, just enough to suggest adjustment. Each tone compensated for pressure change, aligning like an instrument responding to hands that weren't there. The team moved downward, each chamber closer to the next. Ice began to curve more easily, less resistance to cut. That suggested movement within, melt from pressure or slow reshaping over time. But melt didn't leave smooth walls like these. Melt leaves collapse. This left resonance. In the final chamber reached that night, the walls curved upward and out, forming a parabola too perfect for chance. Instruments confirmed a new frequency at 17.9. Still within resonance range. Still coherent. Still utterly unlike anything ever registered from naturally occurring glacial structures. They stopped drilling. Not from fear. From something deeper. Recognition. This glacier was listening. Not for sound. For force. For weight. For motion moving across the crust of the planet. Each chamber aligned to receive that signal and return it as song. Not for meaning. Not for message. Just because ice had learned to sing back. Hydrophones lowered into the chamber mouths didn't catch noise. They caught shape. Tones layered across time signatures no one had written. Vibrations too slow for melody and too consistent for weather. Pressure had learned to speak here, not with impact, but with intervals. Long pauses, minor shifts, frequencies breathing against one another like lungs that never emptied. Each tone moved beneath perception before it reached the ears. There was no song, not in any human sense. This was not music built for hearing. It was sound meant to be felt. Recorded over hours, it revealed a cycle. Not artificial, not environmental. Rhythmic. Predictable. Originating from forces larger than weather, deeper than ice. When mapped against tidal data, pitch altered within a narrow band every 6 hours, 4 minutes. The modulation was not random. Tones grew sharper as gravitational pull peaked, softened during ebb. Sound changed as the ocean shifted thousands of miles away. Thermal drift altered timbre again. As sun shifted across the glacier's far side, ice compressed differently. Slight contraction. Slight tonal lift. Nothing human could hear without equipment, but it was there, real, structured, repeating. One tone responded to seismic patterns. A pressure wave from a minor quake in southern Japan reached the glacier 13 minutes later. Instruments caught a rise, half a hertz, then drop. Another chamber matched that shift with delay, like response, not reaction. None of it came from within. These chambers did not generate tones. They received pressure and returned sound. A passive system. But not passive in design, passive in nature. Grown, not built. Accidental, yet exact. It became harder to write field reports without abandoning old language. These weren't voids. These weren't echoes. These were registers. Pressure moved through crust and ocean and sky, and this glacier caught it all. Held it. Let it ring. No resonance leak. Walls shaped in such a way that sound folded back into itself. No distortion. No decay. Just music too slow to count as rhythm. Too deep to count as silence. It wasn't a recorder. That implied choice. This was different. The chambers didn't remember events. They felt them. Every footstep, every shift in wind speed, every tide, every fault line breath, transmitted across the planet's skin and received by ice shaped just right to respond. Not intelligently. Not consciously. But with purpose embedded by age, motion, pressure, time. One by one, sensors confirmed harmonic alignment with planetary modes previously dismissed as background noise. Earth hum. Oceanic microseisms. Solar-induced thermal drift. All present, all parsed, all held in low frequencies between 10 and 24 Hz. The glacier was not resonating. It was processing. Some called it coincidence. Others stopped speaking entirely, preferring the sound of what couldn't be explained by structure or error. No one asked who built it. No one believed it was built. Ice had been listening for centuries. Not waiting. Not remembering. Just listening. As if the planet needed somewhere to store its pressure. Somewhere cold. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere shaped just right to let the world hum through itself without needing to be heard. The models began as overlays. One data sheet placed atop another, no adjustment, no calibration. Global seismic reports fed from stations along fault zones, mid-ocean ridges, volcanic bands. Everything raw. No filters. Just pure waveforms. When laid beside the glacier recordings, the matches weren't immediate, but they weren't hidden. Low-frequency pulses from Chile's subduction zone. Tectonic breathing under Greenland's eastern flank. Quake swarms from beneath Indonesia's seabed. All appeared within the glacier tones, not in replication but in refinement. Delay measured in precise intervals, never random. Some signals arrived days later. Others only minute. The glacier didn't echo them. It transformed them. What came through wasn't identical. The ice reinterpreted waveforms, smoothed jagged frequencies into clean harmonic ladders. Out of raw pressure came symmetry. A filter without design, but with rules. Every signal passed through those cavities emerged changed. Not distorted, not corrupted, but rebalanced. A shift from 19.4 Hz after an aftershock in Kamchatka. 22.1 aligned with sea pressure changes near the Drake Passage. No voice. No message. Just transformation of weight into music that no human could hum but every body could feel if left alone long enough inside that cold. Over time, the team realized they weren't charting anomalies. They were observing a language of pressure the planet had always spoken, ignored only because the noise was too slow to measure by ear and too low to feel unless stilled by silence. A pressure wave struck the glacier from thousands of miles away. The cavity shifted. Another tone rose, climbed slightly, rested. Not pattern. Not reaction. An automatic balance recalibrated by form alone. As if ice had learned to stay in tune with forces that never stopped arriving. The software failed to explain why no decay existed in the glacier's returns. Any other structure would lose tone over time. These did not. Each chamber retained its frequency as if built to last beyond memory. Nothing reinforced them. No support. No intelligent design. Just geometry shaped by pressure repeated over centuries without break. Microseisms, once dismissed as terrestrial noise, became the fingerprint. Every tone produced by the glacier matched a low-level vibration already known to science but never meaningfully understood. Deep tremors from beneath the Indian Ocean translated to sub-bass tones inside the glacier's middle depth. The shift aligned with the waveform's arrival, not with any environmental change. No sign of decay. No interference. Just pressure becoming form. Form becoming tone. They stopped asking how. They started asking why no one had heard this before. Only glaciers under absolute silence could reveal it. Only one shaped like this could return it in harmonic structure. The rest either absorbed or cracked or forgot. But this one filtered. Not in the way machines do. Machines require instruction. Ice required time. There was no intention. No awareness. The system responded because that's what its shape allowed. The way a bottle sings when air passes across the rim. The way a canyon returns sound not to speak, but because the walls were arranged by chance to hold it. The glacier wasn't alive. But something in its design let the earth speak in music, long before anyone thought to listen. Glacial core samples drilled from above the chambers came back denser than expected. No fissures, no trapped gas, no signs of meltwater intrusion. Layers stacked without interruption, compressed over centuries under weight that only ice could survive. Each stratum preserved in shape and pressure, like pages pressed between stone. No artificial marks. No bore traces. No thermal cut. Nothing that suggested tool or purpose. But the symmetry remained. Cavities aligned too cleanly, too proportionately to ignore. That contradiction required an answer that didn't begin with intent. It began with force. Thermal creep became the first candidate. Over time, under pressure, ice moves, not rapidly, not visibly, but always. Heat from the Earth's mantle rises in fractions, bending solid structures inward. Over millennia, what begins as fracture becomes fold. What was once solid transforms, without break, into curve. Add sublimation. Internal pockets form where ice turns to vapor without becoming water. Minute changes in pressure, trapped gases escaping, tiny shifts invisible to the naked eye, stretching across generations of silence. Then flexion. Tidal forces acting not on water, but on frozen mass. The moon's pull reshaping land-bound glaciers day after day, pulling, releasing, pulling again. Enough to bend structures inward, force alignment along tension paths. Each push subtle. Each release temporary. But over time, over hundreds of years, shapes begin to tune. The model came together slowly. Ice was not inert. Ice was obedient. Given time and pressure, it answered in form. Not randomly, repetitively, predictably. Shapes began to mirror tone. Cavities emerged where harmonic nodes aligned. Some spherical, others elliptical, each spaced by distance that matched the pitch they held. Not a machine. No wires. No circuits. Just temperature, pressure, time. A system evolved by accident too elegant to call chaos. A frozen harmonic engine. Not sculpted. Shape. The structure functioned because it was never designed to. It responded because the conditions allowed no other result. That made it all the more exact. What human hands try to build in years, glaciers shaped over centuries by doing nothing but surviving. Modeling back through time, the team tracked where shifts might have begun. A minor fault line. A warm undercurrent that pushed up long before instruments existed. Ancient storms, sediment layers, thermal records encoded in ice. All aligning into chambers not drawn but revealed. Nothing was inserted. Nothing was added. Each cavity a subtraction shaped by the forces above it, beside it, beneath it. Every resonance formed from pressure applied at the perfect angle, held long enough to settle. No intelligence. No pattern outside the physics of fatigue and resilience. The shapes sang because they were shaped to sing. Not by anyone. By time. By strain. By the quiet insistence of pressure refusing to leave. Word traveled faster than expected. The raw data wasn't even formalized before inboxes filled with flagged requests. Government censors had registered atmospheric harmonics without context. Someone cross-referenced the origin. Someone else followed the funding trail. The glacier no longer belonged to silence. They asked for access. Not politely. Not slowly. Agencies with long names and short patience. Technical liaison teams. Monitoring divisions. Simulation departments. Each demanded a sliver. A sample. A footprint. One drone run. One core slice. One seismic pulse strong enough to test the load limits of a chamber system that had never collapsed. They wanted to see how it would break. Not from cruelty. From method. From standard practice. Test. Model. Repeat. Measure failure before failure arrives. Insert probes. Trigger vibrations. Record collapse. Confirm hypotheses. Publish findings. Turn anomaly into framework. Archive anomaly. Move on. She refused. Once. Twice. No justification given. Just refusal. Her silence became obstruction. Obstruction became suspicion. Pressure turned formal. The team fractured in conversation, not argument. There was no shouting. Just drift. Words dropped in private, in low tones over meal trays, while staring through portholes crusted in frost. One asked whether it was selfish to keep it untouched. Another asked whether it was selfish to let it be touched at all. To do nothing meant silence. No further study. No measurements, no models, no chance to understand how many others might exist. To do something meant rupture. Even the most careful probe could shift tone. Even one misaligned drill could fracture a curve. The system wasn't protected. It was balanced. Barely. They discussed control measures. Tethers, dampeners, soft drilling rigs. But every solution risked collapsing what couldn't be rebuilt. No map could recreate pressure shaped over 5 centuries. No lab could replicate ice curved by tide, not temperature. The glacier didn't belong to science. But science claimed it anyway. A request arrived to simulate a controlled collapse, digitally, at first. Feed the data into a structural failure model. Estimate the harmonic shift as each chamber deformed. Predict what tones would result. Not in sound, but in pressure. Use it as a training baseline for subsurface listening arrays. That was how it would begin. Not with hammers, but with math. Not with violence, but with interest. She didn't answer. Not out of resistance. Out of reluctance to turn something so silent into something so useful. They had recorded it. They had heard the glacier listen. That was already more than anyone else ever had. Outside, the frequencies remained unchanged. Tones still pulsed beneath snowpack. Earth still pressed its weight against the shelf. Ice still translated it. Still returned it. Still held it without asking who was listening. They stood on a structure older than the debate. A system that had shaped itself in response to forces blind to ownership. A recorder without memory. A body that responded because response was the only thing it could do. She asked one question before anything moved forward. What gives us the right to silence a thing that never asked to be heard? Gear packed without rush. Not out of fatigue. Out of finality. Each crate closed with care, each seal checked twice. No fragments removed, no core samples stolen. Only data. Only what sound had given freely. The chambers remained open, untouched. Cavities humming through cold that never cracked. No probes left inside. No sensors embedded in the walls. Just marks in the snow where boots had stood. Above them, pressure dropped. Wind shifted direction without warning. Cold moved sideways across the sky, lifting dry snow into slants that cut light into ribbons. Instruments picked up tremor. Not from beneath. From across. A storm formed far offshore. Not a surge. Not a collapse. Just a push of air thick enough to alter the glacier's posture. Ice flexed. Not breaking, not tearing, adjusting. Pressure rearranged itself inside the cavities. The tones rose. Not volume. Pitch. One chamber lifted half a hertz. Another followed. 2 more harmonized. Sound layered without instruction. Instruments lit up with frequencies stacked in patterns never recorded together. The glacier wasn't reacting to the storm. It was absorbing it. The harmonic range expanded past prior limit. Low tones lengthened. Higher ones shimmered. A complete scale emerged. Not musical, not tonal in human terms, but full. Filled in. Complete. They recorded everything. No breaks. No splices. Raw audio across multiple layers, pressure values included. No voice spoke. No decision made. They simply listened, hands motionless over controls, as the structure told the air what weight sounded like. The storm passed. The pressure settled. The tones fell again, not returning to origin, not repeating. Just shifting. The glacier didn't remember what it had sounded like before. It adjusted. They left in silence. Back at base, the playback ran through archival speakers wired to precision amp. No compression. No filtering. Just the recording as captured, layered exactly as received. The sound began without cue. A low breath below human hearing, followed by tones that rose in half steps across 30 seconds, then collapsed back inward. No rhythm. No motif. No melody. The mind reached for pattern. None arrived. But beauty held. Not emotional. Not melodic. Structural beauty. Pressure shaped into sound that refused interpretation. No direction. No signal. No message. Just presence. The kind of sound that doesn't ask to be understood. Only witnessed. Nothing moved during the playback. No one asked for a second run. Not because it wasn't worth repeating. Because nothing about it needed to be heard twice. Months passed. The signal didn't fade. Remote sensors still caught pulses every morning, some faint, some sharpened. No disruption. No collapse. The glacier remained untouched. No expedition returned. No satellite caught structural change. Only frequency. Low tones persisted through shifting weather. Snowfall muted nothing. Winds crossed the ridge without altering pitch. Data poured in daily. Harmonic profiles mapped against seismic activity, storm systems, ocean current. Patterns formed. Not linear. Not predictive. Still undeniable. A frequency spike aligned with volcanic tremor off Kamchatka. Another followed pressure change over the Azores. Each time, the glacier responded. Not loudly, not suddenly. Just a minor tilt in pitch. A breath adjusted. Analysts plotted the correlations. Experts disagreed on mechanics. Some called it harmonic coupling. Others dismissed it as coincidence. No one explained why only this glacier sang. Why only here did the Earth place sound into form. No probes inserted. No cores drilled. Access denied. The field team issued no further statements. What had been recorded was all that would be taken. The glacier remained. Not preserved. Not protected. Not buried under designation or monument. It simply stayed. Cold. Hollow. Alive only in the way pressure made it speak. No sign of erosion. No loss of resonance. Chambers held their form through temperature shift and polar tilt. Tones drifted, never collapsed. Nothing returned to baseline because no baseline had ever existed. The glacier did not hold memory. It held motion. Satellites tracked anomalies without resolution. Reports marked them but didn't name them. The sound could not be classified. It wasn't a signal. It wasn't an alert. It wasn't intended. It just continued. In the night, microphones pointed north still registered the tone. Barely audible. Perfectly real. Not waiting. Not warning. Just present. Thank you for watching and sticking with me to the end. Now, if you believe humanity deserves a future among the stars, do subscribe now. Only those who'd abandon Earth to its fate will scroll past.